Hello, my name is Lisa Rose and I'm Chris Green Festival Director. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land where I am streaming from, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. Sovereignty was never ceded in Australia. This was and always will be Aboriginal land. Welcome to this live stream Q&A that we're going to be doing from the team behind the wonderful documentary Manscaping, which had its international premiere with us in cinema last night and people loved it. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring them on. Welcome, Brodie and Lee. Lee, you are the director-producer. Brodie, you are a producer and one of the subjects from the documentary. The Naked Barber himself, Richard Savvy, is here as well.
Hey.
Welcome, team. How are we all?
Hi. Yeah, so...
Hey.
I'm Broderick. I'm the director. That's Lee, the producer, and we're joining from LA. And I'll just acknowledge too that we're on the unceded lands of the Tongva.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So you unfortunately couldn't be here for our screening last night, which is a shame. But obviously Richard was here for the screening. And how do you feel the day after now, Richard? How did you get much sleep?
No, I did. I was on a bit of a high, obviously, a natural high after all that. But yeah, no, I ended up getting to sleep about 1 a.m. in the morning. Yeah, ready and excited. And it's like a bit emotional about last night too. It was beautiful to see myself on the big screen and opening up like that. So,
yeah, for sure. It was a really, really lovely screening. So, Broderick, I just sort of wanted to ask, because like Richard sort of answered this question last night, sort of from his perspective, but I wanted to ask, like, the idea for the film, like, how did it actually come about?
Well, I mean, my films are always using sort of queer characters to kind of ask challenging questions, usually originating from the body. And I'd been thinking a lot about how barbering and body hair and performances of those things are really sort of historically coded into masculinity. When I first started thinking about this film, it was at that moment where there was this resurgence of kind of vintage barbershops and kind of a resurgence of beard culture as well. And so I intentionally wanted to sort of look for barbers who were kind of modeling queer possibilities in these spaces. And part of Googling the world, found Richard in Australia. We have ties in Australia. Lee's an Australian citizen, 22 years in Australia, and we always love an excuse to get back to Sydney. And it just felt like kind of a magic opportunity to connect with Richard. And he was gracious enough to say yes. So I think that's probably the very beginning. I mean, I'll admit that I kind of have a little bit of a hair history of myself. I mean, I've always, similar to some of the subjects in the films, have both kind of felt a kind of, a pull and an attraction to, but also a fear in barbershop spaces, and figured out how to cut my own hair in my teens, and was cutting my own hair and cutting friends' hair. And at a certain point, certainly not with any sort of training or specialization that Richard had, but had a little bit of a naked barber kind of journey of my own in my youth, connecting with people through haircuts as well. So yeah, all of that came to bear in thinking about exploring this issue through this doc.
Yeah, right. And then so Richard, like, what was your first reaction, like when they kind of approached you? Like, how did you sort of react when they first said, "Hey, do you want to make this film?"
Well, to be quite honest with you, I don't really say no to jumping in front of the camera much. So, of course, I took up the opportunity to tell my story and to step in front of the limelight again. It's just part of my nature. I think that's part of the essence of what makes me the naked barber and so comfortable with being naked, is I do have that moment where I want to shine all the time, and I'm comfortable with myself and who I am. So I have no problems doing interviews or talking in front of the camera. So yeah. I'll take any opportunity.
any opportunity to spruik.
opportunity.
So how did you find Jesse and Devin? Like, did you first, like, was Richard who you first found, and then you were like, there's a story here, what can you add to it to kind of expand it? Or like, how did that kind of work?
That's a good question. I mean, I'm a professor too, and so I had these sort of feast and famine, very privileged opportunity of having a sabbatical every 4 years. And so I had been doing a lot of research and lined up a lot of people to be able to film. And then Lee and I basically went on like a 4-month journey to kind of film everything. Jesse was also somebody who I found just through doing online research, and was really looking for queer spaces, queer-centered barbershop spaces, and came across Jesse. Devin, the visual artist in the film, who is sort of asking questions around particularly the Black barbershop through his art, is somebody who Lee and I are major sort of visual art fans, and actually have followed Devin's work for a long time. And when he produced this barbershop series of paintings, and I saw some of those images on Instagram, we were immediately like, oh my gosh, I mean, this is something that absolutely fits in as well. And that was really exciting.
Yeah, because it's really fascinating how it is, like, it's the one element of barbershops, but how you're covering like 3 very different people who have very different connections to it and are doing very different things. So did you come across any queer barbershop quartets? Are they things?
It's funny you say that. Actually, I had, this always happens in the journey of a film. I had some ideas that I was going to pick a range of individuals who, through their identities or their professions or their performativity, were using beards and body hair to challenge ideas of what it is to be a man, and intentionally sort of pushing that idea. And so I originally had this idea of it being 6 people. I had 2 barbers, so Jesse and Richard. Then I actually had 2 visual artists I was thinking about, Devin and another visual artist who is from Iceland, who makes work that's really preoccupied with beards and his own inability to grow a beard. And then I was thinking about having actually 2 cisgender female performers who play around with performativity of masculinity, drag king sort of things. And as the piece journeyed, and things evolve, and some people say yes, like Richard, and some people are less inclined to say yes. The piece kind of starts to tell you what it's going to be and who it is. And in the end, the idea of this trio really just somehow worked. It covers a lot of ground, a lot of different registers of the queer experience in an intersectional way, and it just sort of clicked.
And that's something that revealed itself to you when you looked at all of the footage. We collected a lot of material during the time that we were traveling, and it was really exciting for me to watch with Brody, because I knew what we were filming, but I had a kind of idea of what it was going to turn out to be. And then when Brody got into the material and it started to reveal itself, it was a surprise, even to me. So it was very exciting to see that he discovered the connective tissue and how these characters spoke to each other. He realized there was a really strong, shorter piece. This is the shortest feature you've made. That was a comprehensive story that utilized barbering as the spine from which to tell the story. So it was really a wonderful surprise to see how this film turned out.
Yeah. And so I should have said, if anyone's watching and want to ask a question, they can, and we will get to it. So can you talk a little bit about like the process of, because obviously documentary, it can take a long time. And so can you talk sort of about the timeline of how this kind of all worked and things like that?
Yeah, like I said, I'm really lucky. I get to teach and make work, and that does mean that sometimes it does slow me down a little bit, in the sense that I'm using my summers to really kind of reconnect with the project. So we filmed a lot of the material in 2017, and in some ways there was actually a really kind of, in hindsight, a real benefit of having to slow down a little bit, because it meant that I actually was then able to cover the actual New York opening of Devin's show in New York, where he shows the barbershop paintings, and then also I mean, not to sort of give a spoiler away, but Devin sort of thinks through the process of the film about, he has a certain ambivalence about whether or not his fine art practice, which is, very successful in terms of museums and institutions, necessarily reaches the communities that he actually wants to dialogue with about gender and sexuality in spaces like the barbershop. And so he'd been looking, when we first met and I'd interviewed him, to try to find a way to kind of engage some sort of community-engaged social practice in his art practice. And it just happened that by me being slow to edit the movie, another chapter occurred in terms of his ability to actually bring this barbershop series to community. And I had the ability to have that be included in the film too. And then, we all sort of fell into a global pandemic for 2 years where we were stuck at home. And again, I had the real luck of having this cache of footage to work with. So I got busy in a moment where, a lot of filmmakers were feeling really stuck. I actually had work that I could do, and that was really gratifying.
We're just having some technical problems. Richard's been going, he's coming, he's going, he's going.
He's back.
It's the weather. We've got some.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
Which I think is
no worries.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. So
at the moment.
that's all right. So Richard, I just wanted to talk about like your sort of experience of being. Obviously, you say you're very comfortable in front of the camera, and I believe they followed you around for not a huge amount of time. Like, but did you find that you were just able to just be yourself and act completely naturally in this kind of, because obviously you've done performative stuff, but where it is literally just you just being you. Like, how did you find that experience?
I think even with my performance stuff, I'm still very much me in a lot of ways. But I didn't find it hard. I don't find it very difficult, as I said before, to just be myself and open up. So, it was, I think it was 4 days the boys came and spent with me, 3 or 4 days. I'd be honest with you, it was 6 years ago. So rewatching it or watching it, I actually didn't realise how much time we did spend together. I kind of forgotten a lot about that. A lot's gone on since then too. It's like, oh my god, that's right, we went to the beach. Oh, that's right, we did that. I got tied up and suspended. So I love it when the boy contacted last year saying, oh, by the way, we finished this movie and would you like to have a look at it? And I was watching it, it was flooding back to, oh my god, I really opened up and all that. But I don't find it hard being myself at all. I think if you watch the doco and hear me speak about some of my past, especially, and as I spoke in the Q&A last night, I was very privileged to come from a family that know everything. So I've always had the chance to be myself. It's very hard for me to be anything else but myself, I find, most of the time. So, yeah.
It's good. It's good. There's only one you, so it's always good to be one you.
Well, yeah, there's only one of all of us. So, yeah, as I said last night, it's good to just love yourself, all of yourself, your bads and your goods. And if you put them all together, it just makes a beautiful mix of madness, and it can bring you strength and, a lot of great people around you too. That's what I've found.
So in terms of Brody and Lee, Richard, can you just mute yourself while you're not speaking? If we can just do that, let's just see if that works so we don't get any feedback. But the in terms of like the other two, so obviously you filmed Richard like years ago. Like when was the filming happening with Jesse and Devin?
It was the same. It was that one kind of whirlwind tour. We filmed with Richard first. Richard was the first person we filmed with. Then we ended up filming with Jesse up in Vancouver. And Devin was third. And so that all happened, initially happened in 2017, 2018, with the opportunity that then I was able to film a little bit more with Devin. That next chapter was in 2019, fall of 2019. Right.
Yeah, and that's a long a long post process. Can you talk a bit about post? And I also wanted to just talk about the score. Like the music I really liked the music in in the film. If you could talk a bit about that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I sometimes slower than I would like to be with post, just in terms of you know, finding time to really dive in and commit fully to a project. So ironically, it was another 4-year mark. It was January of 21, this last year, that I got another sabbatical and I pulled out the drives. And, you know, like I mentioned, the world was in lockdown, but I actually thankfully had a chance to really focus and edit. And, you know, as Lee was mentioning before, I think the first month of that was figuring out what the film wasn't. And then once it clicked, you know, editing pretty quickly, you know, really about 3 months of really refining and locking the film, and then getting the opportunity to bring in our sound designer and composer. You know, our sound designer's name is Scott Johnson, and composer Ronit Kirschman are, you know, a team that we've worked with now on 3 projects. I mean, Lee and I are sort of a 2-man band in terms of production. Lee's the producer and sound recordist, and I'm the cinematographer and the director. So it's a band of 2, and it stays like that for quite some time until we sort of bust out to this enormous crew of 5, which ends up being sort of you know, Scott and Ronit, and then also Diana Keeler, a colleague of mine who does the color grading and motion design. So it was so great to be able to collaborate with Ronit again on the music. She's just a real virtuoso. I've had the privilege, like I mentioned, to work with her on 3 projects, and she just has a real sensitivity and sensibility to kind of find the voice for this work. So Richard, probably last night was the first time you heard the actual finished score. I shared a piece with Richard earlier with temp music. So yeah, it's great music.
Yeah, it is. And obviously the key element of this film is about, you know, creating safe spaces and inclusion and that sort of thing. I just wanted to see if you could kind of talk about, like, you know, sort of your discovery of that was the theme of that, and then like what you kind of learned from that, of like what people could probably take from it, of going, you know, we need more spaces like that, whether they're barbershops or any space. Like, how can we create those more inclusive, safe spaces for our community and beyond?
Well, I mean, I think I definitely want to hear what Richard has to say about this, because he's really the pro. He's created that space. But I think I intuitively was always looking for a space like that. And when you hear Devin talk about cutting his own hair and the impetus for the barbershop series of paintings, it's an interesting parallel where he figured out how to cut his own hair too, because he felt uncomfortable going into some barbershop spaces. And so I learned a tremendous amount about what is possible by watching Richard in action, and also Jesse as well, in terms of what spaces could be. I don't know. There was a funny thing that occurred where we filmed with Richard for 4 days, and I realized we'd gotten extraordinary interviews. We got a beautiful fetish sort of tying session with Eleni Deviate over at Studio Kink. We got to actually film one of Richard's queer porn shoots. We covered all this stuff, and we had a gorgeous session with a transgender man who's a client of Richard's, who was getting body grooming. And at the end, I was like, I don't have any haircuts. I don't have a haircut. Anyone giving a haircut to Richard? And so I said, wait, producer, you're getting a haircut. And then, so in some ways, I don't know, do you want to talk about what that experience was like in terms of safe spaces?
I think it was really clear what it was like for me, Richard, that I had no idea that was about to happen. And as I said in the film, it was the nicest thing a man had ever done for me, to experience that kind of intimacy and kind of danger that I was allowing. I'm a control freak, and to allow someone else to have a blade near my neck and their penis at the same time. It's like, there was a lot of input. There was a lot of information going in, and it brought up a lot of stuff, sex and death, right? So I guess it hit me on some kind of really deep level, and I was so moved. And it was a beautiful experience for me. And I think that creating these spaces where masculinity where you don't have to perform and you can just be and be vulnerable with our queer brethren, and to share that with the community at large is the ultimate lesson, isn't it? We got to get past it all. It's so, especially with the way things are moving in the world at the moment, it seems like we have to be even stronger yet again to keep saying, no, it's the wrong direction, folks. So the fact that we can offer up this positive film, I think it's not there just what we've learned from it. It helped to amplify what we want to help share with the world. So it was a surprise for me in the end how that film result came to be and what it was in the end, and I'm thrilled to be able to share it with everyone.
Do you have anything to add to that, Richard, in terms of how to create that sort of safe space?
Yeah, well, I think we spoke about this last night. Well, I know I did. I believe when it comes to creating a safe space, the doco pretty much explains it all. Is that all came from experience of not feeling safe. We all three men, including myself, had an experience in the past where we just did not feel safe. And from that came empathy for others. And I think you really got to go through it to be able to create that. And yeah, that's how a lot of those things stems. Most beautiful things come from darkness in life, I believe, depending on who we are. And I think you just, in that doco, just shows three very strong men that have had their dark times and they understand others and they can deliver a safe space for those people. Understanding it's the empathy that comes with the experience that helps you create the real safe space instead of just creating a safe space to be a safe space. If that's what you want to do. I think you kind of need the heart in it as well to really understand what a safe space is really about.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It needs to be. What was I going to ask? So this is obviously, it's been a long process getting this film up on the screen, and now this is I think it was the second screening that's happened. So did you manage to get to the world premiere or not?
No, so the film got to have its U.S. premiere at the Santa Fe Film Festival here in the United States, and it's a wonderful festival that's been very kind to me and has shown 3 of my films now. So I did not make it there. But we also didn't get to Sydney, which was a real kind of huge FOMO for us, or just a lot of mo for both of us. And so in terms of the idea of, having so much history and having such a tight community and having Richard there, that was really a sad one to miss. But yeah, we're just at the beginning of the journey. The film's going to screen at BFI Flair in London in a few weeks, and we're going for it. We're gonna come to that one. March 19th, we'll be at a screening at South Bank in London, and that'll be our first big international trip since March, since before pandemic times.
The before times.
The before times. Yeah.
Yeah, the before times. Yeah. Yeah, I was so pleased to see it turn up in Flair's program. It's such a wonderful film, and I'm so pleased that we were able to screen it, but also just screen it so early on in its journey. And I hope that it manages to screen at festivals all over the world, and that all 3 of you get to go to some of those screenings, because I think it'll be a very different experience depending on where it is that you actually screen it. And maybe, as someone asked, maybe you will have to have some franchises happening for the Naked Barber. Richard.
We'll see about that.
He's the OG. There's no other one. He's the experience.
Yeah, they might just.
I don't mind. I like being a tourist attraction here in Sydney. So I think it's nice.
There's also that. Yeah. Make sure make sure you trademark that. Naked Barber.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. I want to thank you so much for joining us this morning or this evening, wherever you are in the world. And I wish you well. And it's such a beautiful film. And for those people who are tuning in now and may have watched it, make sure you vote for it in the Audience Award. And yeah, and have yourself a very merry rest of your day.
Thank you to the whole Queer Screen team, and Richard, we love you. Thanks for
Thank
coming.
you so much for letting me be part of this. Thank you, and happy Mardi Gras, everyone.
Yes, happy Mardi Gras!
Stay dry.